show you this field. If you're looking for Steve in April, if it's night, he's in a trailer on the station. If the sun's shining, he's in this field. We talked a little about breeding and genetics, and the students might enjoy this. These are F2 segregating populations along the front here. So when you make a wheat cross, you're crossing two pure lines, just like you're crossing two corn inbreds. The F1, the first generation, all of the seed from that cross are going to be identical. They're going to look uniform. When they self-pollinate in the F2, they segregate in a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio for all of the hundreds or thousands of genes that the two parents differed by. So if you look in this plot, you'll see tall awnless, tall awned, short awned, short awnless, stripe rust resistant, stripe rust susceptible. You'll see all manner of plants in here. Next week, hopefully, I'll have a crew in here and they'll go through these plots and they'll take a piece of painter's tape and they'll look for a nice, clean, short, plump head, and they'll put a piece of blue tape around it. When it dries up, we'll come back and harvest all of the blue taped heads, and those will be head rows the next year. So it takes about 10 years, if you're not doing double haploids, to go from a cross to a variety release.
How many head rows do you do a year?
This year we have 52,000 wheat head rows and 16,000 oat head rows. The most I've ever had, and I'm supposed to be retiring. Not only that, but the 540 crosses we made this spring, except for half a dozen of them, are 10 years down the pipeline. So I'm assuming the AgCenter is going to be benevolent and hire a new wheat breeder. We're going to try to keep the pipes primed. This trial is part of the Sun Grains trials. We won't go through them, but this is the Gulf Atlantic Wheat Nursery. It's the advanced breeding lines from Virginia Tech, North Carolina State, Georgia, Clemson, Florida, LSU, Arkansas, and Texas A&M. This trial is tested in 8 states, replicated, and there's about 65 lines in it this year. There's probably 2 or 3 that'll be varieties in 3 years. So breeding, wheat breeding, oat breeding, any kind of breeding is a very expensive process. My little program probably costs $350,000 a year. But the return to the state is millions and millions of dollars a year. So it's important, and not only that, but there are hardly any commercial companies breeding wheat and none breeding oats. So if a farmer is going to have a wheat variety, no matter what the name of the company is, it's probably a Sun Grains wheat variety. So that was just to kind of give you an idea of the amount of effort that goes into wheat breeding. There's about 300 segregating F2 populations. There's about 350 F3 populations. And there's about 1,200 yield plots in this field. We'll come back in 3 or 4 weeks with our little toy plot combine that only cost about $250,000. And we'll harvest each one of these plots individually and get weight, test weight, moisture, and other attributes on it. All right, genetics lesson here. This is part of those 52,000 wheat head rows. For generations 2 and 3, they're grown in bulk plots, like segregating populations like you saw over there. In the F3, we pull individual heads, cut them with a pocket knife, thrash them one at a time, collect the 50 seed, and plant it in a head row. So these are head rows. That's FFR 520 as a spreader, GACT7 as a spreader. Now here's the genetics part. These 3 rows are F7 derived 8. So they are 98% genetically identical. They all came from the same F7 row last year. So last year there was an F6 derived 7 row, and we pulled 3 heads from it, and now they're F7 derived 8, but they're a 98% identical family. So you go through here and you select the best families, and then you select the best row within a family, and if they're this far advanced, you harvest that row by hand, thrash it by hand, take that 200 grams of seed and plant 2 plots next year. If it survives that stage, you harvest that with a combine as pure as you can, and you plant 4 locations, 2 reps the following year. But look at these. They look identical, right? They're 98% identical, but look at this row. 1 gene for this new stripe rust race was still segregating. So this population is a 2017 cross, number 176, and then that's the selection history behind it. So that's about enough of that. There's 12,000 head rows in this field, and they are, you know, this row could be 4 years away from being a variety. It's 8 years away from the cross. So it's like watching your kids grow. My daughter hates it when I say that, but you follow them from year to year, and you kind of think about the genetic potential. And some families you say, I wish they'd have never made it. And others, you're really happy you carry on with them. All right. So this is just one more look at that 16020-22 that we said is a double haploid 2013 or 2016 cross. And what's impressive to me about it is even the bottom leaves at this time of year are green and clean, and that's unusual. So this one we have a 3-acre increase of in Plains, Georgia, and I would bet my paycheck against anybody's that it'll be released this summer. It's been a while. I think we're going to release at least 2 wheats and probably 2 oats this summer. Everything else you see is, these are big increase blocks going across. You can see where they change. And then all of the ones up here are 44 foot long by 15 foot wide or more increase strips of the same line. And Kelly and his crew will be back Monday to walk through them and do what we call roguing, which is basically pull out anything that doesn't look like it belongs. If you're not an old man, just pull it out and throw it out to kind of purify it. The other thing we do is we'll harvest 500 individual heads from this, thrash them all individually, and plant a big block of head row purifications next year. And then in the head row purification, you can absolutely see if a plant's different. And you just chop down the ones that are different and combine the rest, and then you've got pure breeder seed.